Hello,
Hi.
welcome to That'll Be the Tism episode six.
Six, yeah.
Six.
Mm.
Yes. I just forgot as we were talking whether it was five or six.
6 episodes. We had an email today to say congratulations on getting as many episodes as you have. Most podcasts don't do that many episodes, and I'm
Oh, did
like,
we?
most podcasts aren't autistic.
Yeah, I mean, we were aiming to be consistent for a while.
Mm.
Yeah,
It's like a marketing one, but I'm just like,
that's not the point, is it?
mm.
I did see an email come in and then I read the subject and thought that's spam. I'll let Claire deal with it.
Well, I just read it. I hadn't replied to it.
No,
I
I'll...
might do and just go tell me how we can improve this podcast that already has everything you could ever want on it.
I mean, that's a really good response, I think. So yes, here we are. How have you been, Claire?
Warm is the prevailing. Is warm an emotion? Because I feel like it is.
Should be.
Um,
It should be an
Very
emotion.
warm. I am not a summer person.
Nope.
Summer is not for me.
This is some of
I
the
need.
season. Just to clarify for anyone listening that might be called summer, this is some of the season we are talking about, not summer.
Well, I was thinking that because my niece is called Summer, and I thought if she has actually got to this episode, which I doubt,
You never know.
she might listen to it and think that I don't like her, and I'd like to think that she would already know that I do.
Yeah. I just
She's
thought
not in control of the weather, so that's the first indicator.
it
Yeah.
told me my phone, the Met Office app told me this morning that it was going to be 17 degrees when I did the school run, and I thought, brilliant. Put my jeans on because then I can put my shorts in the wash. And then it really was horrible. I think it's just so muggy.
Mm.
So I got to get home and put my shorts on, and they didn't go in the wash, but they will do. Um, yeah, the moral of the story is have more than one pair of shorts, I guess. But I like these ones. I
Mm.
won't be able to get any others that are just the same now because it's a while since I got them.
You probably would be able to if you.
I don't know. Can't. I've got one pair of. I seem to have one like pair of jeans at a time that are peak comfort. And I don't seem to ever be able to find another pair that's as comfortable until those jeans burst.
That's how I am with shoes I would buy because I found shoes that I like. And now I didn't know I was autistic then, I don't know. But I would buy two different colours of the same pair of shoes. And then when they were past the best, I'd buy the exact same pair again from the exact same place. But the trouble is now that they don't do those ones anymore. So the pair that I've got,
Yeah,
just need to be
challenge.
careful with because otherwise I won't have them anymore. And I have gone as far as like Google image searching them to see if I can find some more somewhere in the world. But
Vinted sometimes have older things.
mm,
That might be a place. Someone I know has her daughter um, really has the same comforter, and the comforter is just about past it. And she managed to find one on Vinted that's the same that they haven't sold for like 3 years,
mm,
but they just had never been used. So you never know. It could be
I have to
possible.
have a look. But at the minute, it doesn't really matter very much because I don't need shoes because I don't really go out of the house. So,
No. I mean, I suppose that's one benefit of not going out the house, isn't it?
mm,
If you think of it like that.
mm. But I will need shoes as I go out of the house more to go to my
Yes.
job for
Mm,
my office day.
yes.
And maybe I could have some exciting shoes for that.
That would be good. Jeans
Bloody
have never
hell.
really bothered me, but jeans, I see, jeans, I like the feel of denim. I know it's an uncommon thing to like the feel of with
Mm,
amongst neurodivergent people because most people don't like jeans, but I really like the feel because it's heavy.
that's why I don't like it. Like the jeans that I do have are quite like thin, like stretchy ones.
I like the heavy jeans. So, and my shorts are all denim also, because I like the feel of them, but I get fussy about the fastenings and I get fussy about the leg shape and I get fussy about the length. And generally, yeah, I don't, my body doesn't conform to normal standards, just like my brain. So
Are you a button person or a zip person?
I'm a zip person.
Good.
I
Otherwise, no, I would
accidentally,
have to end the podcast right now. You're just like, oh no, I only have buttons, I don't have zip. Why would anyone want to button their...
one of the problems I've got is that my backup jeans have 2 buttons and a zip.
But if they're both on the same row,
Yeah,
that's all right
no,
then.
no, no. So there's a zip and then there's a button and then there's a button. So going up. So at the top, where there would normally be 1 button, there's 2 buttons on top of each other.
I think
So I
that's
have,
acceptable, but entirely buttons is just
yeah,
not like, are you all right? Because not only that, but like, I'm of a
time
certain
commitment.
age. I ain't got time for all that when I need a wee.
It's big time.
We've really gone to that place already in this episode.
I don't understand how we've spent so long talking about jeans already, but never mind.
6 minutes in, and I've already told you about my toileting habits.
Clothing. But yeah, so it's warm and autism causes clothing issues is another issue. I never thought of myself as having like sensory issues around clothing until very, very recently when I started realizing how fussy I am with trousers. And how they feel on my legs. And yeah, that's pretty much the only thing though for me. And I don't like coats, and that's quite a big thing as well. I don't like wearing a coat because I'm just overheat dead quick.
I am the same. Like I can go out somewhere in winter, and my mum will go, "Do you not need a coat?" She was insistent that when we went to Benidorm last year that I would need a cardigan for the evenings, and I'm like, I don't think I will. But you know, when something just gets in your head and you just think, I'm going to the foreign lands of Spain. What if I don't have a cardigan and I really desperately need one?
I
And
usually have
there's
my
no
hoodie.
shops, and I didn't need one at all.
I usually have a hoodie with me if I'm.
Oh yeah, to just
Yeah, I
chuck
have
on
a
when you're
hoodie.
cold because I can't stand being too cold either. But equally, I will, even when I used to go to the office every day, I would wear this sort of top in like December, and people are just like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not cold in here. You've got the heating on."
That's the thing.
So,
Inside, it's always the same temperature,
mm,
or in most places. So it's t-shirts all year round.
mm,
But I do like a big chunky jumper. I'm
I
rarely cold enough to wear one, but I do like them, and I used to wear them lots.
I think I must have sensory issues with jumpers because I can't have jumpers that go around your neck. And also, like, when you get too warm and they get a bit itchy.
Yeah, I think the older I get though, the warmer my body is. Like the warmer I am as a you know person. I don't know. I don't want to say the older I get, the hotter I get because that sounds a bit weird, but could work. I'm not sure.
When it does the summary of this part of it.
Oh, the chapter titles
When,
on our
as you grow
Spotify.
older, Claire needs lots of wheeze and it gets hotter every
Not every day. That's that's how I roll.
Yes.
Mm. But anyway,
So that's
move
how
on.
we are this week, and that's what's been happening mostly.
And we're going to
Hot.
talk about our hyperfocuses a little bit,
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
So, my hyperfocus has been new branding. So that's quite exciting. I started the new branding journey last October time, and it's taken me 8 months to pay my designer and get back to her with my requirements and give her all of the things that she needed. But she has done a fantastic job, and I have a new logo for my business which has a signpost on it and some ivy and a fern. My old logo was designed by myself in Canva, and I just wanted my business to because I've got a proper business now as a coach. I thought, I'm going to splash out and get a logo designed. And so that arrived on Friday night. Well, it arrived while I was on holiday, and then I looked at it and I got excited and I made an excited noise. It was the day we recorded the last podcast, I think, wasn't it? Because I've just looked at it while I was talking.
Was it while we were editing it?
Yeah, it might have been. I just got the email and I had to send Ebony, who has designed my logo. Her company is called Twin Polygon. Please give her work because she is awesome.
But we aren't sponsored by her, but
Not
if she
sponsored.
wants to do if she wants to do us a logo.
Yeah.
No, because we've already got one.
But I got this logo and it's like, it's really weird because you think, what, how can a logo really make that much difference? But you know, it's weird because this logo is just perfect. It's really like just me. It's got my personality like nailed. And I found it quite exciting to I'm changing everything, which is quite good because my branding previously was green and white. And I know that white isn't the most neurodivergent friendly colour, but because I designed it myself, I didn't have the colour matching stuff isn't something I'm great at. So I just did white and green. And this has got like a mushroom colour as the background. So I'm going through now and changing everything so that it's a mushroom and green rather than white and green, because it's easier for dyslexic people to read. Causes less eye strain and is generally less stimulating. It's just less overwhelming and easier to read if it's not white. And I didn't even ask her to change it from white. She just did it because she knew. She just got what I needed. And it's really nice to have something be created for you. I mean, it's the first time I've had something be designed for me in my business life, and I've been in business for myself for 13 years. So it's a huge deal, and I expected to have something come that I would have to go backwards and forwards, and I haven't had to do that. And so now I'm trying not to hyper focus on changing literally because I've got a lot. I've got resources for clients. I've just done an invoice for someone, and I opened the invoice to fill in the name and send the invoice, and I was like, oh, my logo's on this. Right. So I'm going to have to change the logo, and then I didn't like how the logo looked. So I've changed the whole colour of the whole invoice, and nothing's going to be white. I need to change the background of my emails and my email signature. All of the webinars that I do, I'm going to have to re-record them, and because I can't just leave something in the old branding because that wouldn't do. So it's trying at the minute to not let that take over my entire life for like a month while I rebrand everything. But yeah, that's my hyper focus definitely. And I would highly recommend getting a logo designed because it is just been anyone that has a business, not just
I was gonna say I might just
Just-
get one designed for like my life, you know, on a go place,
this
or
is
for my secret superhero persona.
yes.
My social justice secret superhero persona.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody needs a logo for that. You could get a whole suit designed, actually, couldn't you?
I know, but then I'd have to have two because in summer.
And then it would get really warm.
Yes.
It's true. Yeah, I don't want to think wear a lycra at any time, especially not at this time of year in the UK. Right, anyway.
Is that the
Lycra,
hyperfocus?
superhero, social justice,
We,
temperature. So
if you look at that, we've really set the tone for this episode of the podcast. We're back, but we can't promise that there will be any more format to this one than there was to the last one.
well, I'm just looking up the rave now because I've realised that we're going to do the rave maybe, and then I haven't opened the file. I need to share the sound. Right, so are we ready for the rave?
Well, we'll ever be, yeah.
Yes. Here we go. There we go.
I was waiting for the out and they only came towards the end of it.
We always do.
Thought there were more out than that.
No, it's just the one lot in the 10 seconds that I play. Shall we find a different 10 seconds for next time?
Maybe. But more with one.
What we didn't do was explain why we were having a rave to anyone that listened to the podcast before.
Look, if you haven't listened to episodes 1 to 4, because in episode 5 we didn't have a rave, then
Go do
you
that.
just need to go back and reread the wiki of TBTT law to find out.
I
Because I'm
mean,
not explaining everything to you. I ain't got time for that. Like, I've got time to spend 20 minutes talking about Lycra and the weather, but not.
you're saying read the wiki as if
I
we've actually created
haven't
a
got
wiki.
one
There isn't a wiki. You're going to have to listen to all the episodes to find out.
yet.
We will.
Mm,
But, that might be slightly getting ahead of ourselves, considering
mm.
that
Yeah,
we're
I'd
only...
forgotten that we don't actually have one. In
No,
my mind, we do.
because we spoke about it. That's what happens is we speak
Mm.
about things and then they become fact and real and in existence when actually
Mm.
we haven't done them.
I think we need one so we can remember what we've
Definitely.
talked about before.
So we're in the main section. We do a rave because that is the transition into the main section. Welcome to the main section of the podcast. Today in the main section of the podcast, we are going to talk about stereotypes and a little bit of ableism. And basically, it's come about because we were talking about telling people about autism and telling people about our autism and that we are autistic, especially people that have known us for quite some time, because the reaction is usually a barrage of questions or oh really, you don't seem autistic, which is silly, really. I mean, it's just silly because they obviously don't know if they think that.
And I think it's because of the sort of perception of what an autistic person is in media, and also autistic people that you might have met in your life before, where it's been, I guess in a way, it's if there's an autistic person with high needs, it's more obvious that they're autistic to the less observant. And so sometimes that's been felt to need explanation more than for those of us that can sort of explain some of it ourselves, or it can be explained by, oh, she's just an anxious person, or
I mean, by the time you're an adult, you've got an idea in your head of what an autistic person looks like. And when you find out that you might be autistic, you have to sort of try and link that image with how you view yourself. It's not an easy thing to do because it feels like really awkward to be ableist essentially and say, no, I can't be autistic. Why can't you be autistic? Well, because that would mean XYZ of, what image we might have of an autistic person, or that might mean that we have different needs, or that might mean that we're not perfect, because the whole disabled thing meaning flawed or imperfect isn't nice to accept when you're a perfectionist. But regardless of the argument of neurodivergence is a disability because of how society is built, at the moment it is a disability because society is built as it is, and it's not going to change overnight because there's a long time of history of norms being created to all of a sudden, oh, it's not going to change, therefore autism is a disability and will continue to be a disability for the foreseeable, really, as much as we can spread awareness. But when you find out about your own diagnosis or your own identification as an autistic person, you're like, how? I've spoken to quite a few clients that have been fine during the waiting period for diagnosis, and then they've been diagnosed and they're like, oh gosh, now I have to really accept that I am a disabled person and I am autistic, and it's not just an explanation, it's now a fact. The imagery of autistic people in society is generally exaggerated and very stereotyped and made fun of in a lot of cases. And it's not really even such as Sheldon on Big Bang Theory, where you would think that something that recent would be a positive example of autism, but it's not. They laugh at him, they laugh at his needs, they laugh at the routines that he has, and it's not laughing with, it's making fun of. So it's just, we don't see positive imagery of autistic people in the media. generally, with a couple of exceptions and increasing numbers of exceptions, really. There was that drama on the BBC recently.
Patience, yeah.
Yeah, that was quite good. But yeah, it's really difficult when that's what you've had, or you've had someone in the family that's been quite high needs, or I know you had experience with your past work.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
I think you sort of like before all of this, you could probably say that you knew somebody that was autistic, but that you wouldn't necessarily have identified with that because you just sort of, it's sort of almost been made to be something that was only for a very small amount of people, and that those people were all a certain way, whereas it's only just now really becoming more commonly spoke about that it is this spectrum. Certain people will struggle with certain things, other people won't struggle with those things. And everything you could sort of interview 10 autistic people and you'd get 10 different answers to the struggles that they get, whereas that's not how it has been portrayed in media and even in sort of research and things in the past, has it?
there's
That
been a lot of shame as well. Like you would like, oh well, he's autistic, don't you know? And it's like, okay,
mm,
that's that's okay.
mm,
The emotions connected with people and disability and autism gets to be ingrained. And then when you're talking to others about it, and you already have your own stuff that you're dealing with and your own ableism that you're trying to like overcome, and they go, oh, well, you don't look autistic because of their own idea of what an autistic person looks like and sounds like, then it takes you back. It's like a step backwards every time it happens, really, is that you've got to really understand it yourself and have processed it yourself to be able to say, yeah, here's an example, and here's an example, and it might not be what you think. And
mm.
I know when I left, I mean, it's been a long time now. It's been like 8 years since I left the firm of accountants I used to work in Manchester. And I had a conversation early last year, potentially, with someone that used to work there. And he'd rang me to ask about a client that I'd worked on self-employed and he'd worked on as well. And he said, I hear you're not doing accountancy anymore. And I was like, no, I'm a neurodivergent coach now. And how did that happen? And it's like, well, I found out that I'm ADHD, autistic. And he was like, no, really? And I'm like, yes, really? And reeled off like a list of examples where I'd displayed autistic and ADHD traits in the office. And he was like, that makes sense. But you have to be able to do that to do it. You have to be
Mm.
confident in it. And I mean, I'm trained in all of this stuff. So people that aren't trained in it takes a while to get used to people asking questions, and people shouldn't. I mean, I don't think you would go up to someone in a wheelchair and say, so how did you end up in the wheelchair?
I think some people would, and I think that in some ways, I think it's easier when people do that because you can just talk about it and talk about your experience. But it's the whole sort of why we chose this as a topic was, and I think we've spoken about it on the podcast before, was when you get the diagnosis, you sort of like, oh, what do I do now? Do I like make a big announcement in the paper or something like that? You know, do I need to do a Facebook post? And it's like, no, not really. Like you basically said, well, if you want to share something about it in the future, people will just think they've missed something in the past. Like, you don't need to like be saying
Yeah,
this is this. Um, and I think that's probably the best advice is it'll happen organically and you won't necessarily know when it's the right time to start talking about it.
yeah,
But I suppose it's once you've had time to process the diagnosis yourself, you can then sort of, when people talk, say, well, you know, I struggle with this, you can go, oh yeah, I struggle with this too, and it's because of my autism, and I thought it was this, and which is why we're quite um cult is the wrong word, but like we've said before, like join us, join us. If you think you are, you probably are, sort of thing. But I think it's a lot of that comes from having not known for so long, and now that we do, it helps you to understand yourself a lot better and to explain yourself a lot better as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was sent this week a thing that basically said, if you are questioning whether or not you might be autistic, please know that people that aren't autistic don't question whether they're autistic, because it's not something that people want to be. As much as there's the whole rubbish about how it's trendy to be ADHD, autistic, nobody would choose to have a disability. Like, why would you? Why would you choose to have a disability? You wouldn't. There's going to be another way that you can be cool without being autistic. You know, it's not something that is desirable. It's not desirable to feel like the odd one out. It's not desirable to struggle with things that the majority of people find easy. And so, if you are identifying with autistic traits, it's completely okay to say that you're neurodivergent. It's completely okay to go and get an assessment if that's what you want to do. But it's also okay to self-identify, like with autism.
Identify as it and use the sort of knowledge that you've got to recognise not only what the weaknesses, I think, is the wrong word, but the things that you struggle with, but equally the strengths that you have that a neurotypical person wouldn't have, like being able to organise information or.
There's your example of people come to you if they want to speak to somebody that will like address the issue.
Yeah, it's sort of it's the honesty, isn't it? Like I've got a minimal capability for keeping anything to myself. And part of that is because of my honesty, but part of it's also because of I've forgotten what I was going to say
Could
now.
be social justice thing again.
Yeah, so there's um but I was reading something about why autistic people are so honest the other day, and I think it's an oversharing thing as well, isn't it? Like autistic people oversharing. It's an offshoot. It's sort of like it's all linked that you've got this in your brain and you don't necessarily see the reason why you shouldn't share it with everybody. And it's better off being out of your brain than being in your brain and just eating away from you and being sort of almost physically painful that you know this thing.
But I mean, honesty is the most logical thing. Like, if you're thinking logically, which, we tend to, or tend to try to, unless the emotions take over, which they do, obviously. But autistic brains are very logical, and there isn't really any logic to lying and to not being honest and to not addressing issues when they come up, because why wouldn't you do that? It's like a subtext and missing subtext and, hints and things, like not picking up on hints, because if somebody wanted something, they would ask for it, surely, because that's how you get things. I know asking for things is hard, but at the same time, autistic people tend to not realize that they're being hinted at, because why wouldn't the person just say the thing? And it can make communication very challenging, especially if you're somebody who expects people to talk to you directly and then can't talk directly back because of the fear. It's a bit of a minefield. But yeah, it's there's a lot of things that are positives, and being able to speak honestly and get to the point and ask for what you need and tell people what you really think is a positive. Sometimes people aren't ready to hear it, but that's because then generally people are used to being beaten around the bush with, and that's why it can
Whereas
be.
it's like, I can keep a secret if I really need to, and if somebody said to me, like, don't tell anybody, I won't tell anybody. But I don't like it, and I have to pretend that I don't know that information because otherwise, every time I speak to them, I want it's there going, well, why don't you just say that to them? Because it's not in my nature and it's not how my brain works to keep things to myself, especially because obviously a lot of us are social justicey people, and if we see people in trouble or upset or in need, our default is to protect them and defend them, and that's not everybody's default, is it? A lot of people go to self-protection, which is okay, but I think our brains are like, well, I know that if I was feeling that way, or if I had said that and nobody was.
High empathy is very common. We have gone off topic.
Yes, we definitely have.
Yes.
But I think
That's understandable.
that's the theme of this podcast.
It's going off topic.
That none of the we're not quite back to the structure yet. Although I think listening to like the last one, I wasn't mad at the fact that there wasn't a structure. So maybe this one, maybe we're going to a bit of a middle ground where we might say things that resonate with you, but equally, if you want to listen to it on double speed, that's okay.
But yeah, so so you don't have to tell people. You don't have to tell people if you don't want to. But as you've said, it's likely to happen organically as you have more accepting of yourself and your own circumstance and the explanations, and your confidence grows in believing and understanding those explanations, because even after you've been diagnosed, sometimes there's a self-doubt period and there's a I can't quite understand how this relates to me, and you've got to figure that out. It takes some time, and it takes research, and it takes listening to podcasts and reading things and speaking to other people. And I mean, we've already spoken episode 1 about neurodivergent communities, but that's where the high levels of understanding are, and the people that you will feel, oh, this person gets me, or I do that, or I do that, And yeah, it's just accepting that it's okay to be disabled. It's okay that you don't fit in the stereotype that you already had in your mind, and it's linking the image of the stereotype that you already have in your head with the image you have of yourself and everything in between.
Yeah, it's replacing the stereotype with the fact that there isn't a stereotype, because there isn't one autistic person that is the same as another.
Okay, so I think that's the main segment. So the trait of the week is taking things literally or being overly trusting. Some people would say gullible. Gullible was something that I was called lots and lots when I was younger, because I just believed things. I didn't understand why someone would be lying to me or joking. Sometimes I didn't get it because I couldn't. It's the subtle kind of joking. Like once one of my friends said to me, we were walking somewhere and he was like, oh, it's this way. And I was like, how do you know? And he said, oh, I've just got a thing in my head that tells me which way north is. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like,
that must be handy.
How does that work? And he looked at me and he's like, I've looked at the map, Emma, I've looked at the map. I don't actually have a thing in my head. And then one of my ex-partners told me once that the tram drivers in Manchester drive the trams backwards. They don't get to the end of the track and go round to the front and start driving from the front. And not only did I believe him, I told like 5 or 6 people and they all believed me as well. And I was like, that's amazing, they drive, because he like said, oh, they use mirrors and da da da. And I was just like, well, that's really, really clever. And then I was telling people about it. And he was like, oh my God, it took him a while to tell me that actually, in fact, I have a feeling we might have been on a tram and I might have seen the driver and turned to him and said, I've just seen the driver move in. And he was like, yeah, but once you started telling people, I just didn't have the heart to tell you that I'd been joking. And I'm like, well, what? It's not funny though. Why would you joke about that? It doesn't make any sense. And now, as a result, I believe pretty much nothing that's ever said to me, because
Hence the tarantulas the other week.
Yeah, I have to look stuff up,
didn't you?
Because I can't. I've been laughed at that much in my life for believing things that when people tell me something that I think sounds a little bit unlikely or weird, I have to fact check it, because I just can't risk. I can't risk more laughter at my expense. So yeah, that's a common thing with autism, is to just believe things, because why would people lie? Why would people?
I don't think it's necessarily lying though. Like an example I'm just thinking of is somebody was saying to me like earlier in the week, oh, they were a bit stressed out and it was because they thought that they'd upset me, and I'm like, are you like being serious about that, or are you joking? Like, is it something that you're saying? And as it turns out, they were being serious, and I was just like, well, now I can tell you that one of my autism powers is that I can't lie.
Yeah,
So if you had offended me, you would know about it. But that's one of my sort of coping strategies, I think. Now I think about it, is if somebody says something, I will have to go, are you joking, or is that like, are you being truthful now?
yeah,
Can't necessarily tell the difference otherwise, like not in the moment anyway. But I think taking things fully literally was more of a when I was a kid thing than now. Like I've got a bit more wary of it as an adult. It's one of the coping strategies to just not necessarily believe everything and go, I have to Google that. But my biggest one that my mum mentioned it on my assessment was when I was going back to school as when I was a kid, and I was looking over the wall and my mum's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, school broke up for the summer holidays, and I'm just checking if they've put it back together again. Because I thought that when you broke up from school, the school physically, they just like knocked it all down.
yeah.
And then when you're going back to school again after the 6 week holidays, I mean, what else would they be doing in the 6 week holidays? Like just
They
having a
wouldn't know.
rest? No, knocking the school down and rebuilding it again. You wouldn't have believed that.
Yeah, and it's
No.
why not, eh?
Mm. So,
What
so an autistic person says to you, are you joking or are you telling the truth?
they genuinely want to know.
Just tell them the truth
Just tell them
because
the truth.
they'll tell you the truth.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really difficult because it's picking up on the tone of voice. It's like, listen, what are the words? Don't look for the tone of voice because we often think we've heard the wrong tone of voice, or we might think something's a joke when it's not, or look at the words. If you're upset with somebody or if you think someone's mad at you, what have they said? Because if you have heard something in an angry tone, but the words don't match the tone, there is a fair chance that you've projected that anger. And
Oh.
the words are more important because the words show the intent, and the intent is more important. It's the same kind of reasoning why we don't pick up on jokes and we believe things, because the tone of humour or the tone of anger or the tone of sarcasm, you know, sometimes just gets miscommunicated in our brains.
Mm.
We can't match the right tone with the right emotion. And
Which
when
is
somebody,
ironic, really, because I sometimes can't understand sarcasm and joking, but I feel like it's like my second language is sarcasm.
me too, but then I don't always convey the sarcasm correctly, even when I'm being sarcastic. My fiance says to me, you've just said that in a normal way, and I think you're being sarcastic because it's the kind of thing you say when you're being sarcastic, but it just sounded exactly the same. Recently, we've had an example where I was on my phone and we were watching something on TV, and I said, "Oh shit." And he said to me, "Right, so is that, oh shit, you've lost a life on your game? Is it, oh shit, someone's messaged you and told you that someone's died? Or is it, oh shit, a reaction to something that's just happened on the TV?" Because I can't tell, because all of the oh shits sound exactly the same. And please clarify. And that's a perfect example of clear communication, really.
Mm.
I mean, it was something that had happened on the TV that I'd reacted to. But I'd reacted to it in a more extreme way than he would have, because I do tend to do that.
Yeah.
I get emotionally invested in things very easily. But yeah, it's picking up on that tone is challenging. So I think that covers the trait of the week.
Yes. There's more to everything in there, and I'm sure
We could talk for
many
years.
more examples of all of the things.
We will talk for years. We're going to be doing this podcast forever. Well, maybe not forever.
Not just this episode though, but
No. The podcast, not the episode.
now are you being sarcastic?
No. Still not being.
Now are you being sarcastic?
Oh, I just don't want to put too much pressure on us, Claire.
We're still here in 20 minutes with me going, but Emma, are you being sarcastic now? Shout my husband and say, come up here and just listen to Emma and just see if she's being sarcastic, because I can't tell.
What we're going to do now is we're going to talk about other things, because we finished the 3 segments. We've got to talk about the reason that the last episode was called Normal Seahorses, because I said normal seahorses, and it normal seahorses is what it gave us, and all the spoons are gone, because we actually did say that because all the spoons were gone.
That wasn't a descript special, was it? That was just the fact that they were genuinely all gone.
I mean, we have said
that because it's our podcast.
We're allowed to change the rules at any time we want. That's us. We're very unpredictable.
Yeah.
And very, very unpredictable.
Can you remember some of the other ones that were enjoyable ones?
I don't remember now. But we had some. There was others. Were they listed in the description last week?
They were, yes.
Oh, okay.
My favourite thing is that I've started writing them down whilst we're editing, but laughing and not telling Emma so that she doesn't stop. And then I'll read them out to her at the end, and half of them she hasn't changed.
No. I've not been paying attention.
And what I might do is leave one in, this one, and that can be the new game. I won't tell Emma to change it. And then there'll just be a descript special that you have to try and find in the subtitle.
See, that's that. The other thing is, you were going to tell me a story about a pigeon, Claire.
Right now. I was going to tell her a story about a pigeon before we started recording one time, and you were just like, no, you need to hang on a minute because you just tell me on the podcast.
Yeah.
And today I've seen a pigeon called Nigel on TikTok.
Okay.
Right? And he's a pigeon that lives in somebody's house. He's a pet pigeon.
Right.
He's got like a little, like hamsters have a little cage and everything.
Yeah.
Now, Nigel has a wife, but not another pigeon. It's a toy frog. He thinks that it's his wife.
How do we know that he thinks it's his wife?
Because the reason why this woman showed his wife on camera was because what he does is they'll come round the corner and they'll be looking for things to take back to the nest because he thinks she's got eggs in it and they've got fake eggs. And sometimes the wife sits on the eggs and sometimes Nigel sits on the eggs. And he was taking bits of heather to his wife. And when she took out his wife, the frog, the toy frog, Nigel was not happy. He wanted the frog back. He wanted his missus back indoors.
I'm really confused.
It's really like Nigel has a wife. I've sent you the TikTok.
You have. You've sent me 2 TikToks.
I just sent you Nigel twice.
Yeah.
Cool. That's because of how I feel about Nigel.
Here is his wife, Ricky the Rain Frog. Interesting. Okay, well that's interesting.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just have a TikTok of the week, which will mostly be animals, I'm not going to lie.
I think that's a good idea, actually. Did we share one about the mantis?
Ludo the mantis shrimp. Yeah.
And then we also, on top of Nigel, not on top of Nigel, because that would be me.
No, but no, Nigel doesn't need anybody on top of him except for his frog wife.
Except for his frog wife. Yeah.
Anybody can find love.
Anyone can find love, even if it's with a frog. So, thank you for Nigel, Claire. I'm very grateful, and I'm sure our listeners will be. We'll have to put a link in the show notes, as well as sharing it on our TikTok, because, Spotify and stuff. We also need to talk about Pikas. If anyone hasn't heard of Pikas, they are the cute animal suggestion that was given to us by a listener.
They are tiny mountain bandits.
Yeah, they live in the mountains and they make funky noises. I don't know if I can play the noise. If it'll.
They steal flowers from each other, don't they? No, I can't hear it.
Oh, it's a
I
shame.
just saw the Pika.
Oh well. Look at Pikas and
Look
you'll
up
very few
Pikas
places.
and then look up what came up as the suggestion for me after Emma sent me that video, which is the hoary marmot.
But hoary without a W, just to clarify.
Hoary.
Yeah.
And they are marmots that are famous not because of their proclivities. They are famous because of their screams. So
Scream.
that's not even worse.
I'm sorry, but it does.
Yeah,
They make funky noises also.
they do.
So go and
They
look them up too.
scream, and that's what we all want to do sometimes.
So yeah.
And they just do it.
So we have now our repertoire includes talking about quokkas, spiders, mantis shrimps,
Yeah.
seahorses, and now pikas and hoary marmots and a pigeon called Nigel.
Pigeon called Nigel. I was going to say, if you forget Nigel, this podcast over.
Done. What we could do is create a 12 Days of Christmas type song about all of the animals. If anyone wants us to do that, please do let us know and we'll have a go.
Yes, we've got a few months before Christmas, haven't we? So
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. By Christmas, we could definitely do a 12 Pikas screeching or whatever.
Oh yes.
You know, all the different animals that we can give to our love.
Yeah. Nigel and his frog one. Yeah. Well, I found all, and as always, if you have any interesting animals,
Or interesting anything.
yeah.
Or
Don't.
questions about autism.
Yeah, because that is what this podcast's about.
Or like comments on what we've done so far.
We promise that this podcast is actually about being neurodivergent and not about the random animals that we've seen. I'm sure I've seen other animals in the week.
Well, you will have. We went on a hike yesterday with my son's first 9 kilometre hike. He'd never done that far. And we went through a field with cows in. So it's the closest he'd been to cows without like a barrier between him and the cows. There was a lot of please go through this field very quietly and don't run. And definitely don't run towards the cows because they are quite big. But yeah, he was quite excited to be that close to the cows. Yeah, and there was Highland cattle further around, and there was lots of sheep. And we stood on a ledge at the top of this hill we'd walked up, and then Tyler stood on the ledge and got his photo taken. Then I stood on the ledge and got my photo taken. Then me and Tyler stood together on the ledge and got our photo taken. And then we walked away back to the top, and I turned around and there was a sheep stood on the ledge. So I think he wanted his photo taken as well. So I took a photo of the sheep on the ledge because he's
like, I'm here now.
yeah, look, I've made all this effort. And we could hear him close by because they're not quiet things, aren't sheep?
No.
But yeah, he obviously wanted his photo taken on the ledge.
So was he watching you having your photo taken?
Yeah, when we turned around, he was like stood at the next rock down, and then we just walked back over to where our bags were and to where my fiance was like stood with the camera. Well, I say camera, I mean phone. He has an actual camera these days.
Winding the film on.
Yeah, by the time we turned around, the sheep was on the ledge.
And you shouted, "Don't do it!"
No, I didn't. I went, "Stay there. Let me take your picture." Yeah.
And sheep famously can speak Yorkshire and understand Yorkshire.
Absolutely, I think. Yeah, they can't speak it, but they can understand it. So we had pictures of me and Tyler and sheep on the ledge. So if anyone wants to email us, you can email us at that'llbethetism@gmail.com, or you can find us on all of the places we are by going to our link tree, which is linktr.ee/that'llbethetism. And we will be back. Are we going to say, because what I've done is I've gone back onto German as well as Korean on Duolingo. So we can probably say goodbye in foreign languages.
Maybe that will excite one of our listeners because he was very disappointed that you didn't say goodbye in Korean. He's like, she should have just tried it. And I'm like, no, I can understand why she didn't because I put her on the spot.
Yeah, it did sound, when I listened to it back, it did sound a little bit like I was just terrified.
Just like, no, I don't want to do it.
So
Don't make me speak Korean.
I won't speak Korean because I'm not confident enough yet, but I will gladly speak German because I've known German a long time, and Duolingo is just more of a refresher at this stage. So I will say Auf Wiedersehen.
Tschüss.
Thank you, bye.
Buenas tardes. Gracias.